Hello, hello, and welcome to this episode of the Nerds of the North podcast, episode number 20, big 2-0. It's a big milestone. Today, we are going to be discussing the newest film in the MCU franchise, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, as well as probably a little bit of a discussion on one of the newer episodes of What If, most recently, the Marvel Zombies episode. As always, I'm host number one, Matt, and joining me today, as always, is host number two,
Nick.
So Nick, what did you think of Shang-Chi? And I guess we'll start with Shang-Chi. We'll kind of just stick with that for now, and then we'll kind of move into zombies later. But what did you think of the movie?
I definitely was on the hype train before I went to this thing because it was getting a lot of positive buzz. Mm-hmm. And usually when that happens, I tend to agree with what the audience is saying because I'm pretty easy to please in a lot of ways. But this movie I did really enjoy. I thought it was much better than Black Widow. I might even say ridiculously better. So there might be some here that disagree with that particular assessment. Mm-hmm. Essentially what this movie is about, so we have I don't know how to say this man's name. Shang-Chi. Am I saying that right? Or is it Shang? Shang or Shang? I don't know. So I'll just go with Sean. Just because that's his name in the film anyway.
Sure. Anyway, his made up name, but
yeah, but it does sound like Shang or Sean or Sean or whatever. Mm-hmm. Anyway. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, Sean, this character, basically he came over to America as just a young boy. I think he was probably 12 in the movie's timeline. Does that sound right? Maybe he's a little older. He might have been like 14. He might have been like 14. Anyway, so his dad, who is in like the head of the 10 Rings, which obviously ties into the first Marvel movie that Kevin Feige produced for Marvel Studios, which was Iron Man, which that's a long callback, you know. And right. I think this movie definitely redeemed Iron Man 3 for me in a lot of ways as well.
Sure.
I know that movie I think kind of like was a big old wet fart for me. It's like, I know you probably disagree with me there, but this movie kind of like I feel less offended by that film. Just as far as like mythology building within the Marvel universe, I found it like it kind of redeemed that. And kind of made it a lot more interesting. Anyway, so we got Shang-Chi and he's in San Francisco. His mom died and his dad basically he's on the run from his father because his father's like a psychopath. And basically through the movie, he's being brought back into his father's sort of sphere in China and going back to try and basically get back to where his mom was from. And his mom essentially is almost like a mythological figure. Like she's like sort of a mystical
being.
Yeah, from like, I think Talos is what it's called.
Tallow.
Oh, I should probably fix that on my blog. I was going to do that earlier, but I totally forgot. Anyway, so we got basically the movie is him and his Shang-Chi and Katie, his best friend, and his sister, basically trying to stop his father from getting into this void-like world and releasing a flying Cthulhu monster onto the world of men. It's like a ring wraith sort of situation, which
soul eaters, right?
I like that. I mean, that monster, the CGI on that monster was good, and the dragon was like that was pretty intense. I like the dragon. Good. Yeah.
Also, spoilers from the
time. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I think my favorite thing about this film is the mythology building. I love like. So the MCU, like Kevin Feige just keeps building up these like layers of like mythology on top, blah, 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 like, and it's crazy. And then we got like this kind of East Asian sort of mythology, specifically Chinese mythology. I mean, I think the world of Talo also had some Japanese mythology in there with like the Nine Tails.
Yep, they immediately called that out, right?
Yeah, like that looks exactly like Nine Tails.
Little Nine Tails and little Vulpix.
I know it's a kitsune or whatever, but and I don't mean to diminish the kitsune. It's a really cool. Anyway, you've seen Lovecraft Country. No, there was a kitsune creature. Anyway, so yeah. So now we got East Asian mythology, like this like sort of mystical mythology Now it's layered on top. Like I was just going through some of the stuff in the Marvel universe. We have like androids, witches, wizards, gamma radiation, shape-shifting aliens, time travel gods. I mean, it's crazy what we got going on in the MCU, and I love it. It's my favorite thing
Right.
about this stupid thing. Like I love that kind of stuff.
Well, like fairly early on in the movie too, like Shang-Chi and Katie are on their way to, oh, what was the city they traveled to at first? It's
Ooh,
where the Fight Club is, where
yeah.
they meet his sister.
I know exactly. It's not Hong Kong. It's a casino city nearby Hong Kong.
It's,
Definitely had some Casino Royale vibes to that scene, which is what casino? No,
Macau.
Macau, not Casino Royale. It was one of the James Bond movies. They have like this really cool fight scene with like the neon in the background, and they kind of replicate that just a little bit in this film. I thought they did a good job of it.
That's cool.
Which is the other amazing thing about this film. The action scenes are really great. I think
Mhm.
most people agree with that. They, especially that first fight scene on a bus, definitely like Marvel usually doesn't have fight scenes like that, which is fun.
Mhm.
And yeah, I definitely like the kung fu or I just like that kind of stuff. It was really fun.
Yeah. Well, like that's one of the reasons why I've been excited for this movie is I've been kind of craving kind of like in old school beat 'em up like kung fu style movie. And like this movie 100% checks all those boxes for me. Just the choreography in this was just so freaking good. Or the fight choreography, I guess. But yeah, like talking about just building layers, they just like super casually have Wong, who's in this fight club, Doctor Strange's assistant or friend, and he's just like in this fight club, absolutely having a blast, kicking the shit out of like what is now canonically Abomination
Yeah, that was
from
awesome.
from the Ed Norton film, where he was the Hulk,
Yeah,
which is just like wow. So there's a lot of crazy implications there. And then just like he and Wong just like go through the same portal together to like whatever fucking facility. Like, what the
yeah.
fuck's happening there? Right? Like they just casually drop that and then it's never mentioned again for the rest
I
of the movie.
I love that. And then they had like that little scene where it almost seemed like the fight was like set up. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And then
Yeah.
like they like walk out together. Oh man, I love that. That was so much fun. I feel like kind of like Wong is becoming like this. He's sort of becoming like Coulson from Phase One
Hmm.
in a
Oh
way. Like
yeah,
he's like showing up in a lot of different movies.
that's
It
a
seems like
fantastic comparison.
yeah, and I wasn't expecting that for
Hmm.
Wong. So I'm growing to like Wong's character quite a bit.
Hmm.
And I was gonna mention that too, Matt, because I we obviously haven't talked about the zombie Marvel from What If, but I don't think we talked about the Doctor Strange episode either. So we could also
Oh
talk
no, we
about
didn't.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, like what so I obviously you like the movie, so is there anything else that you want to point out as something that you really enjoyed? I got a few more things I think that I can point out that I really
Mhm.
liked, but
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, you're totally right. Like, I love how there are a lot of callbacks to the older MCU films. I mean, obviously, we've kind of done the spoiler thing already, but spoilers, blah blah blah. Trevor, like the
I
would
that's what I was
be
gonna
Shakespearean
say.
actor, like
That I
makes.
love that. He did such a good job.
I mean, he was so charming in this movie, and like he's just such a lovable idiot. He strikes you as more annoying and kind of like Jabady a little bit in Iron Man 3 because everyone was kind of excited for the inclusion of the Mandarin, kind of an old school Iron Man villain to show up, only for him to really truly not be the Mandarin, and for this Shakespearean actor, Trevor, to
Yeah.
be revealed. But for him to show up again just is such a deep cut.
Yeah.
And he's just so funny. And the way they reveal him, like as soon as I heard like just the coughing in the background or whatever the fuck he was doing, I was like, hold up. Is this
Yeah.
what I think it is?
It was leaked that he was gonna be in it, and then they I think they basically surrendered that it was a secret because then they started having him like Ben Kingsley in the press tours. So people, I mean, if you were paying attention, you knew who was going to be in it. But
Right.
yeah, he did a good job. And did you see? I don't know if you have Disney Plus. You must. Yeah, you obviously have Disney
Mm,
Plus. You watch it. But they had like that one Marvel one shot. I think it's called All Hail the King.
Okay.
And have you seen that? Basically, it's the Mandarin's character Trevor Slattery, and he's in prison, and basically he gets like abducted. And this came out, I think, with the Iron Man 3. I could be wrong. I don't even want to say that because I'm not sure. But anyway, it came out with one of the Marvel movies as like an extra on the Blu-ray disc.
Oh,
But
really?
basically, it's like a 15 or maybe like a 12-minute like little one shot where Trevor Slattery is in prison, and then basically he gets abducted by the Ten Rings, saying like you were imitating our the true master or the true ruler or the leader of the Ten Rings. And
Yeah.
so they take him and abduct him. But the other nice cool thing about that is do you remember from Iron Man 2? I think it hit Hammer,
Just
played like
Hammer.
Sam Rockwell. He's in that too. So I would definitely
I should definitely check that out.
Yeah, you should watch. It's actually really good. I think it's well done. But yeah, I would watch that. It definitely sets up this movie and Trevor Slattery's character for this film. And he's not as charming as he is in Shang-Chi, but you can definitely see he's funny. That
Oh
character.
yeah. I mean, what I really liked too about the villain of this movie, the father, he like really is a very sympathetic character in a lot of ways, because he's just devastated at the loss of this, the one person he ever really cared about, especially for someone who is as old as he is. And he's really just hell-bent on trying to like recover the love of his life, and is being tricked into doing something terrible to get her back. But like, I think
that actor is Tony Long, just throwing that out there.
Tony Long, he did a fantastic job in his portrayal. Really, like, clearly a bit of a monster in terms of how he raised his children, right? But like his grief is very palpable, and I found that like to make him a much more compelling villain, because he's been misled, but his heart is in the right place. It's just he's being tricked and doesn't know, and really realizes his fault much too late. But
yeah, I think he's definitely built up to be sort of a tragic villain, but he did like think he basically killed he thought he killed his son, though, for what it's worth. So I don't know. At the end, you're I'm like, okay.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, he's still an asshole for sure, but like in terms of villains that we've seen in the MCU, he's one of those that you don't immediately just hate him. You hate a lot of what he does, but I mean, like, his motivations for what he was doing in the movie were for something he really cared about.
Yeah, I mean, it also helps that he was just a great actor too. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then Shang-Chi's, counterpart in this, Katie, was so funny. Like, she was fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know, like, I do like Aquafina. I don't like that name. Aquafina.
Yes. No,
I mean, I don't know if you've seen the Farewell. She's really great in that. And if I don't like her in like movies like this or Jumanji 2 or that other new Disney Raya, like,
yeah,
I forgive her for it because I did like The Farewell, and that was a good movie.
Sure. But yeah, no, like, I really didn't have many complaints about this movie. It honestly did, like, my first love for the MCU was Iron Man, and like, it has served as a lot of inspiration for my life and like my career choice and everything. I saw that when I was younger, and I was like, well, okay, I guess I'm going to be an engineer. And like,
yeah, that's really interesting that you say that. You were so inspired by Iron Man's character that it influenced your life to become who you are today.
Yeah, like, it holds a very close place in my heart. And like, this movie like kind of gave me a lot of the same vibes as the first Iron Man movie, and I can't quite place why that is, but maybe it's just the characters. It's certainly not the setting, but like something about Shang-Chi's journey reminds me of Tony in a lot of ways. So, but
yeah, that's interesting too that you say that, because I don't know, like I appreciate what they did with Iron Man's character, and like he is a really compelling character and super charismatic. But like I've always been way more of like a Captain America guy for sure. As far as like the MCU is concerned, like
sure,
I'm not like huge on Captain America outside the MCU. I don't think, like, I never had like an attachment to that character before.
sure.
Probably I'll say Winter Soldier. And then when I saw Civil War, like I just ended up loving his character because like I don't know, just the way he acted and what he stood for in that movie, I really like, just like standing up to authority and like fighting for what you think is right.
Sure.
That's always something that's been really near and dear to my heart. Like striving for that freedom just to be like who you are, and like I don't know, kicking off the bureaucracy, man.
Yeah, I remember that very specifically when Civil War came out. You and I were literally Team Iron Man versus Team Cap. Like,
yeah. I mean, and I just generally like those characters a little bit more who were on Team America. I think Team America, Team Captain America.
America.
Yeah. Just like I do really like I like Bucky as a character. I like Steve's kind of romance, like love-hate relationship. Well, mostly love on Steve's part, and but yeah, I really appreciate that he just never gave up on his friend, and then like that. I mean, and you can say the same for like Iron Man. Obviously, like he had a good thing with like Rhodey, but I don't know if it ever got to the point where like you saw like Tony sacrifice basically everything to give up his, everything to save just like Rhodey's life. Like Captain America was willing to do over and over again for his friend, which I think that's what he stands for. So just like it's not just, it's about saving one person is like just as important almost as saving like everything, which is like for me like what a hero is all about.
Sure. But yeah, no, like this movie, I don't know, it really pressed all the right buttons for me. I really truly think that I am very excited to see more of Shang-Chi, and just like Simu Liu, like getting to see more of him is going to be really exciting, because he also is just a very charismatic, and like it's very fun just getting to see him and his reactions to like how well this movie's being received, and
I do think
his excitement.
I think he sort of jumped the gun with this whole like this is an experiment comment by Bob Chapek. I thought he jumped the gun a little bit there, but and then it is did you see like, so he said something about, because he's a Canadian, Simu Liu, and he said something to the effect of like his parents moved from China to Canada to give him a better life. And the communists in China, like they were so angry about that, like they basically came out and said that we're not going to release this film in China. They were looking for an excuse not to release this film.
Oh, of course.
And in their country, and are not allowing Disney to release it in their country, and they're using that as an excuse for not allowing in the country for Chinese audience to see it legally.
Right.
And I've heard people like, especially Grace Randolph, and she's, I really like listening to her. I think she's a more controversial figure than I realized initially, apparently. But like I thought she had a really good point. It's like, well, if China's not letting Shang-Chi in the Ten Rings get released in China, like, well, does that mean that, and going in the future, like what if they put Simu Liu in like an Avengers movie? Does that mean that China's gonna basically say every movie that Simu Liu is in, they're not gonna get released in their country? So what does that mean for the future of this character?
Right.
I think it's like a
it's
like a business thing. It's kind of interesting to think, like, what are they gonna do? Like, is that do you think Disney is as powerful as the Chinese, the Chinese Communist government? I don't know. I don't think so. Probably not.
No, I think that there's either going to be some level of damage control on Disney's part that's going to like be attempted, at least on their end, or they're going to have to like majorly alter the movie in some way to allow it
To the Chinese market.
to be allowed in the Chinese market. But even just having like Simu Liu's name attached to it, I think is going to be like a big enough issue for the Chinese government, because as we've seen, not to like get too political for too long here, but like the Chinese government has not been loosening its grip on its control over the whole country and the content it consumes in the past, even year, much less further back.
And I didn't realize. So any foreign film that gets released in China, the studio only gets 25% of that, of the revenue it makes in China back. So apparently, like, so a movie like Endgame, when it came out, it made a lot of money in China. I think it made like 600 million or something crazy like that.
Sure.
In just China alone, which I mean is huge. Like Marvel only got, or Disney only got 25% of that back, which is crazy. I mean, that's still a lot of money, but when you think about it, wow, like they're pocketing a lot of that nice revenue, like the Chinese are.
Well, it's a large enough audience to desperately want a slice of that pie, regardless of if it's 25%, or they probably would even go for it if it were even less. But
yeah,
I think a big part of that too is that, for my understanding of things, like when a movie gets released in China, it stays in theaters for a very long time. Like they don't pull a lot of movies very often from being shown in theaters.
I mean, honestly, like since they only allow, I don't know how many, they don't allow that many foreign movies into their country every year. So the studios are basically jockeying, like politicking to get their films released in China every single year. So they probably just don't, like, as far as the output that America and the West has for films, they probably just don't have near the number of films getting created and released every single year. So it kind of makes sense that they wouldn't have that. I mean, I guess even like looking at like India, like in their Bollywood, like there's so many movies getting produced every year, but China, like I don't know, does China have? They do. I know they produce their own movies there, and actually, I didn't realize this either, but like for this year, they have two of the top 10 movies released this year, like revenue wise, they have 3 of the top 10 movies, and they also have the number 1 movie of generating movie this year. And it's only like in China, right? Like most people only watch that movie in China or like the adjacent countries. But I didn't realize how that worked. I just assumed that Hollywood was still producing the movies that were making the most.
Well, and I think again, though, I think that's a bit of a misnomer, because I think that ties back into that, like those movies being in, because when you think about it, like it's a smart move. Obviously, you want more people to see your movie because more butts and seats watching your film means you're making more money. But like with the Chinese market, you get your movie in and it's going to be in theaters for forever. So if you can get your movie there, then like the hard part's done. Then you're essentially just earning money like for very little input. So it's like you get that movie into theaters in China, like the investment, you're going to make that back through other audiences. It's like the Chinese market is just that like sweet cherry on top. Like, because how much, you're not going to be putting a ton of effort into like what, advertising in the Chinese market, like.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I mean, obviously that's completely foreign to me. I have no idea what the marketing strategy for a movie like Shang-Chi, like if it was released in China, like what that would look like. And I've also heard arguments too that like Shang-Chi isn't really a movie made for like Asian people. It's a movie made for Asian Americans. Like that's who the movie is for, really. Because I mean, it's not from like someone that's living in China. It's not really from their perspective. It's definitely from like an Asian American, like immigrant's perspective, very much so than the opposite, I would think. Unless, I mean, the closest I think you could get to maybe from that perspective would be Shang-Chi's sister.
Right.
And I mean, that was my one major criticism of the movie. I thought that they they didn't do that character dirty, but I did kind of feel like she was sort of an afterthought. And it's almost like, in a way, like her not being in the movie, like it really wouldn't have changed potentially all that much. I mean, there's a few things where like obviously they found her like at the boxing ring. Sorry, the fight
Yeah,
ring.
the Fight Club, more
And
or less.
I mean, she helped in the final battle, but I mean that stuff I feel like could have been easily changed to like not even include her at all. Um, and I think you said you had a thought about that too.
Yeah, I mean, more or less, I would agree. I think that they could have done more with her. Like my original thought I was having was that she was kind of a static character. Like she didn't really change that much over the course of the film. But that's actually not right because she does soften a lot on Shang-Chi. Like her relationship with her brother was not good when they first meet up again. You know, they're literally beating the shit out of each other in an arena, and it isn't until his sister really sees. It's like, can you remind me of what her name is? It was
Ooh, see, that's how you know
King,
she wasn't a great character because you don't even know her name.
because it was
Her name
I think it was
was
spelled Xing.
Zhaoling. Zhaoling.
Zhao right?
Yeah, I think that's. I
Um,
mean, I'm not going to butcher that name. So
Zhang Ling. I knew how to spell it, but I didn't know how to say it. But yeah, like Zhang Ling, like she just, because you're right, like she really didn't do that much over the course of the whole movie. Like it almost felt like her presence was just to kind of like really set the tone for the dad. Like he was kind of redeemable in some ways prior to us learning more about like how she was treated after the mother died and after Shang-Chi left. So it's kind of like her appearance in the movie was mostly as like maybe the push off the cliff, so to speak, of like really making us understand how terrible the father is. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I'm happy that her character's in there, and I definitely think she should be explored more if they make a Shang-Chi too, which I think based on this movie's performance, they probably will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the other thing too, I guess before we head on to the next thing, I guess there's two more things I thought would be worth at least a brief mention
Mm-hmm.
is how this movie's because this movie actually did pretty well in its second week as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually this year has been kind of interesting, just the movies that have held over into their second week.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie actually held a lot better than Black Widow did. And
Yes, it did.
obviously, we know from what happened with Scarlett Johansson that she sued Disney over that movie and not potentially making as much money that it could have if it had not been released on Disney Plus as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I know this movie is being watched pretty closely, probably by both Disney and Scarlett Johansson's legal team to see how it kind of plays out. And I am kind of curious, like if you compare the two movies, how it's going to look.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, like at this point, though, I don't know if it's really holding up for ScarJo's case. If you look at the numbers, especially since I think this movie made quite a bit on Disney Plus as well, and she's obviously getting at least part of the cut of that. So I think if you actually like add in the Disney Plus numbers plus what it's making in theaters right now, I'd be kind of curious. And I should have maybe looked at this beforehand, like how it's like comparing. But I still think right now that the Black Widow's a little bit ahead of Shang-Chi, and
Mm-hmm.
I think people probably would attribute that to Scarlett Johansson's character Black Widow, Natasha having a little bit more name recognition.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a super fair comparison because it's a very unknown character uh, in the greater
Yeah,
world of media versus Black Widow, who has been in the public eye. The MCU
yeah,
has been a part of the culture of the world really for the last 10-15 years. So like
yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily a fair comparison, but it will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, I think some of the things too, like looking at that movie and probably its box office revenue, like I kind of don't think it would have been like it probably would have been like it's a Marvel movie, so it probably still would have made like Ant-Man numbers, Black Widow, but
Mhm.
I just don't think it had the audience buzz going into it. And I think partly because the movie wasn't that great. And I know you probably disagree with me on that, but also the other part too is, I mean, Black Widow, her character died and that movie came out. Like it should have come out way earlier than it did. Like it's kind of
Yeah.
like even if it hadn't been delayed a year and a half, it still kind of feels like yesterday's movie, you know? Like it
Mhm.
feels like it's like it feels kind of out of touch with where we are in the
Yeah.
timeline. It
Well,
just doesn't feel relevant or like a must-see movie to me, you
well, it
know?
feels really awkwardly placed, and especially because, like, as we've learned, behind the scenes wise, that there's the timing of that movie was definitely off from where they wanted it to be, at least in comparison to where like we are in the MCU, or not the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but like the Marvel television universe, the MTU.
I mean, I guess they're still all technically part of the MCU, even though
Okay,
it's not in the cinema, but
the cinema, yeah.
I think it's
So
still part
we'll
of
we'll
the
call it the
MCU.
MCU for
Yeah.
simplicity's sake. But yeah, like that the shows on Disney Plus, we ended up seeing characters in those shows before we saw them in the movies that they were supposed to originally be introduced. Specifically, Julia Louise Dreyfus,
Yeah, I can never
her
say that name.
character, like, um, like we were supposed to see her for the first time at the end of Black Widow, and it feels a little weird to be seeing her again now. Like I feel like her impact might have been a little bit greater if we had seen her in Black Widow, been like, who's this character? Why is she talking to the sister? Blah blah. Because really, like the conversation shifted so much into being about Black Widow's sister. Um,
Yeah,
and that's just because now she's the relevant one. But the whole
yeah.
movie was about Black Widow. You
Well, I
know?
think, and the thing too, I think if you look, I think is you're going to look at the numbers too, and I think the reason why Shang-Chi
Mhm.
is going to hold up better is just because I do think it has better audience buzz and is generally a better film.
Mhm.
And it also feels like a step forward in the MCU and not like just kind of like a reminiscing sort of movie.
Yeah.
So I think, as we've seen already, I think it has better legs. Also, there's like no other big movies coming out for the rest of September.
Mhm.
So this movie basically has all of September to itself.
Right.
So it can just kind of like tiptoe through the I don't know, meadow or whatever. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to like
Well,
battle
no, I mean,
for
like,
that for that money.
well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Disney announce pretty recently too that the rest of the films they're going to be putting out, like MC, or maybe just films they're going to put out
Yeah,
period, are
for the rest of
all
the
going to be
year,
in the
they're gonna have
theaters.
that. Yeah, they're gonna be theater exclusives for that. I think 45-day window, and then I think they go to video on demand, and I think then maybe a few weeks after that they might go to Disney Plus. I could be wrong about that though, so
Yeah.
don't quote
But
me on
that
that.
is
But
interesting though. That is definitely them like putting their flag in the ground and going like, we're here to fucking
yeah,
stay.
well, it's because Shang-Chi did well. I mean, and
Mhm.
if they had, even when you saw Shang-Chi did well, like you saw Sony move up the release date for Venom 2,
Yeah.
because it was going to be, I think, August, or sorry, October. It was going to be like October 16th or 15th, but they moved it up to October 1st. And there was even like talk that they were going to delay it till 2022. But because this movie did relatively well, they're going to release it in October.
You know, I've just gotten so used for the past year for things to be delayed that for a film to be moved up rather than
Yeah,
pushed back is a weird concept.
yeah. Um, and
So
then
that's
the last thing I thought could talk about too, just for
mhm.
fun, was
Yeah,
that the end credit scenes for this movie and what you kind of thought of them.
yeah, because there were two of them.
Hmm.
Because I remember the second one better than I remember the first one. The first one was,
I think I can describe it a little bit if that helps.
yeah, please.
Yeah, so we see, so obviously at the very end of the movie, we see Wong basically pick up Shang-Chi and Katie and take them to the Sanctum Sanctorum or whatever it's called in New York City.
Mhm.
And so they walk into, man, if my memory serves, they're in some sort of like library maybe, or some
Yeah,
sort of room. and then you have Hulk there, or Bruce Banner,
Yeah.
who's no longer
See,
Hulk.
that's the one that I remember, because that's the one where, yeah, like they essentially show like an interstellar
Yeah,
map.
and somehow the rings are like drawing something in from space to Earth.
Yeah. But only when Shang-Chi started using them. Like, so something about him using the rings, because his
Yeah,
dad's been using them. His dad had been using them
that's a
for,
good point because I didn't even think about that, but that's a good point. I didn't think it was somehow tied to Shang-Chi having the rings.
and so like, because yeah, his dad was using them for literally, centuries.
Yeah,
And so without a blip, unless maybe there was a blip and they just didn't know, but wouldn't they have contacted the father? They're like,
yeah, I don't know.
hey,
They also
you're.
said too, and I this idea came up in my mind during the movie too. It's like, well, where do those rings come from? That's
Mhm.
kind of in my head too. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess no one knows.
Well, apparently, yeah, like that was something that I was really looking forward to in this movie, is that I know so little about like the Marvel stuff moving forward in terms of like what's coming. I did a lot more research and just kind of knew things just from having been involved with comic books and films and things and video games previous, in the MCU, to where I kind of knew it was coming with the Infinity Saga. I don't have a freaking clue what's coming this
Yeah, we
time
should
around.
we should talk about that too because there's a bunch of spicy rumors out there.
Yeah, and so like, I mean, the one thing that I've been stuck on personally was just when they introduced Adam in Guardians 2. And then we haven't heard a fucking peep about that since then.
I have to think that must come in the Guardians Volume 3. Yeah, because I feel like to introduce something so huge like that, they have to have a plan, or I would think they'd have to have some sort of plan to use him somewhere along
Oh
the
yeah.
line. I don't think they're not gonna do like the leader from Incredible Hulk 2 where you see him at the end of the movie and then you never hear from him again, you know?
Right. but yeah, no, I really have no idea. Like, clearly there's something in space that's associated with the rings. And outside of
Yeah.
that, I have to assume that it's like, because
I feel like so far they've been kind of so they've been obviously been setting up Kang,
yep.
um, and they've been setting up, in my opinion, like some sort of cosmic nemesis, which this movie kind of played into as well with like the Void Bat Cthulhu creature. Um,
Right.
there's some sort of thing with the Void going on where I think like obviously the Darkhold has some sort of dark hold on Wanda's mind. I think we're gonna play out, and that's something like the rumors have been going on that like that's who the main enemy in Doctor Strange 2 is gonna be Wanda,
Mm-hmm.
which I love. I think it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So
It'd be heartbreaking, but really cool to see
yeah,
like what that would look like.
I will be right back. For some reason, my alarm's going off in my room.
Yeah, you're all right.
Alexa, stop.
Hmm.
I do not remember setting an alarm, so that was annoying.
Oh, good. But yeah, no, I mean, clearly I'm really excited. This movie definitely kind of jazzed me up for the MCU again.
Yeah, I
Um,
would agree. I would agree for that definitely. I love the shows. I think they're awesome, and I was kind
mhm.
of almost feeling like, oh, so the shows. I was almost like getting more excited for than like the movies coming out because I'm like, oh, Shang-Chi, I don't really know anything about that, or like
Mhm.
the Eternals, I'm kind of like, I don't really know anything about that. Like it could be good, but I don't really know.
Right.
But I am really excited. I mean, I'm super excited for Spider-Man. Like that
Mhm.
trailer was crazy, and yeah, just the rumors and the stuff
Mhm.
coming out of that movie, like that's gonna be a
So good.
wild ride. A wild ride, I
I
think.
am so freaking excited for that movie. Like,
Yeah.
oh, like you wouldn't believe. But what do
And then
you? Mhm.
oh, I was gonna say the Hawkeye trailer came out today too. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Hawkeye trailer. I love the vibe
yeah, I
of
was
that
surprised.
trailer.
I was surprised
I
by the vibe of that. I was not thinking it was gonna be like a Home Alone.
Yeah, I know, right? Like Home
Yeah.
Alone, Die Hard, like kind of like had a really great, like the fact that it's very Christmassy uh is fantastic. So I'm quite
Yeah.
excited to to see that as well.
What are you like excited for the Eternals now?
Yes, I mean, I have been excited. I would say I'm only marginally more excited because of Shang-Chi. Um, but like I just still don't know what the hell is going to be going on in this movie. And
Yeah.
something that I think is going to be a problem with the Eternals is
Yeah.
that you have more actors in this movie than when you had Avengers come out, and with
That's true.
none of the buildup. So you're just throwing a pile of people at us and going, here, care about them. Why? Like,
Yeah. Well, I know
so
the movies, and I'm gonna kill her name, but Chloe Zhao. She's directing that movie,
mhm,
and granted, I've only seen one of her films, and that was Nomadland. I love that film. I thought it was great,
sure.
but not a MCU vibe from that film. So I am curious how this film's gonna feel. Apparently, she wanted to use more on location uh, when she was filming the film, and you can kind of tell from the trailers that it does look like it's more like on location rather than on a set or blue screen or green screen or whatever.
Sure.
So I'm excited to see how that looks.
Mhm.
I also spoiled myself completely for that film, and I'm kind of disappointed I did that to myself because it makes me not excited for it as much. Um,
See, yeah, that's
but
why.
yeah, I do
That's
think
what.
Thanos is going to factor into it somehow. Like I think apparently I think his brother is in it or something, and I don't remember. That's just I was like
Mhm,
that's on Wikipedia. You can see that. So somehow these are I think
mhm.
Thanos is somehow connected to these characters, and I'm not sure how.
That's would be. I don't know. I mean, it could have something to do with like his home planet, Thanos's home planet. It was Titan, right?
Yeah,
So it could have something to do with that. I mean, like it seems that this group of individuals, the Eternals, get sent to planets to protect them from various things, and
yeah.
maybe Titan was involved in that in some way, and it fell.
Well,
I mean,
I think he was an Eternal or something. He's like part of it, and I don't know how. He's like
hmm.
yeah, or it's something like that. I can't remember. He's like
Mhm.
somehow he's one of them somehow or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, like I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I've kind of tried to keep myself relatively spoiler free on Eternals. Is like I'm curious about what they're going to do with it. I don't have the same excitement as I did for Shang-Chi, only because I've only been like very marginally aware of that character, but just like seeing the hype around this movie really built me up,
Yeah.
and just like the cast being so great for it, like I just was quite excited. Whereas I haven't really been seeing all that much hype building around Eternals so much. Um, Maybe when we get closer to the release of that movie, it'll be different.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be.
But
Especially if that movie is getting like good critic buzz and general audience buzz,
mm,
like I think it's gonna start building up and
I'm
that's how
still
usually when
really
this stuff works. So
I'm really weirded out by um, Angelina Jolie being in the MCU. I don't know, something about that just seems very strange to me.
yeah, I'm not a huge fan of hers in general. Like I don't know if I really like her as an actress. So I'm a little indifferent. You know,
Mhm,
I'm not like super excited to like see her in the MCU or anything. The person I'm most excited about seeing I think is Kit Harington.
mhm.
In his I think Dane Whitman, I believe, is the character that he's playing.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, Black Knight.
yeah, Black Knight. And
Mhm,
so I'm excited for that. And I'm excited to see where his character ends up, I guess,
mhm.
more than anything.
I mean, I'm really excited for. Let's see, what's his name? Is Kamal Nanjiani? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. I really enjoy Kamal Nanjiani. So like getting to see him in this much more serious role,
I
I
mean,
think
and he
it's gonna be
got
super
jacked for
fun.
this film.
He is so ripped for this. It's
Yeah,
crazy. Dude got yoked.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's intense.
but I guess we should take a minute and talk a little bit about what if. Um,
Yeah, for sure. I think we can talk about I think both the Doctor Strange episode and the zombie episode. Yeah.
so can I, or I guess we'll just go in the order they were released. So the Doctor Strange episode, I would argue, I think lived up to the hype. that it was going to be like one of the best episodes. Really, like nothing there that like I was disappointed in at all. I thought it was a devastating episode, just emotionally. Like
Yeah.
this Groundhog Day esque sequence of him just attempting to save, the love of his life and failing over and over and over again. It reminded me of the Time Machine a lot.
Yeah, I definitely got like a Final Destination vibe, or if you're a fan of Lost, when like Desmond kept trying to save Charlie, but because that's how it always was supposed to be, he couldn't save his life, and he was ended up dying anyway.
Yeah, like, and his desperate, bid to try and get power, and the way he did it's just this abomination of a ritual, absorbing the power of all these creatures. Like,
That was really cool. I thought they did a really great job with those visuals.
oh, the visuals of that were
Yeah,
fantastic.
I was definitely getting like Cthulhu, like Lovecraft vibes from that, and also like SCP universe stuff. Like I love that. And in fact, just a plug real quick, if you like the Lovecraft stuff, like check out SCP stuff. It's just amazing. There's a YouTube channel called the Exploring Series that, man, I've been listening to that so much recently, so it's great.
Those videos are really excellent. I really enjoy them too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've heard a rumor, and you probably saw this yourself because I think the first time I saw it was on Reddit, but that there was a people spitballing about how that version of Strange is Dormammu.
Oh no, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, that was basically like he ends up by himself in that like pocket universe, just by himself.
It makes sense because
crazy.
I think Cumberbatch also voiced Dormammu.
And so like he just in his bid to try and like regain his universe, his world, he tries to, gain more power and ultimately ends up like losing sight of like who he was and becomes Dormammu. It kind of like feeds into that like he is without time idea. Like he so
yeah, that's a cool idea. I haven't heard that, but I kind of hope that is true. Actually, that sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think that's a really.
If you look at like the previews for episodes coming up, it's pretty obvious that. Sorry, that means interrupt you, but the character is gonna be in the 4 upcoming episodes, or one of them. Like, I'm not saying he's in the next one or anything, but he's gonna be in the rest of the season.
Sure.
So he's not trapped in there permanently. He must get out at some point, so, but maybe he gets put back in there too, after whatever happens.
I mean, who knows? Like maybe, I mean, they can kind of do whatever with the show, but like maybe the events of like Spider-Man 3 end up like causing some event for all these people to come meet together. We don't see anything of what happens, but we just get a glimpse of like something happened in the multiverse, and so all this stuff ends up being blown wide open.
I guess just for my thoughts about it, I thought it was pretty good. Like I mean, for a 20-something minute episode, I was, it was good. I liked it. I'm not gonna say like it was like my favorite thing Marvel's ever done, but I thought as far as like what they are doing with this show, I thought it was pretty great. And I think before we even get into the next episode, I do think this show would have been better if they just dropped all episodes at the same time. I think waiting week to week for this one kind of, I don't know. I don't think it works really.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it diminishes the
yeah.
Like the initial excitement was what all could they do, and like the first episode was just kind of a primer, whereas like the second episode really like brought to light like all the things they could change and how wildly different things could be. And it's kind of hard to like that second episode, I think is going to be the crown jewel of this series. And I think it'll be really hard to one up that with much of anything.
Yeah, I mean, if of all the episodes, I actually think I even like that one more than the Doctor Strange episode, just because I thought it was fun. Yeah, I was consistently entertained and also surprised throughout that episode of like, oh, they're doing that. Oh, like, oh, Howard the Duck. Oh, Thanos is good. Like, oh, Laserface is good. Like, oh, that guy's actually really funny. Oh, yeah, I just like getting I'm like, oh wow, I really think this is cool what they're doing with this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think, and you also notice too, I think like the buzz for the show isn't anything like the other Marvel shows, the other live action shows so far. Like if there's not really, people aren't talking about it that much.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and I'm just gonna say, like, I think that if they just had dropped all episodes at once, I think that would have been different. I think people would have been like, "Oh, this is great." I think if you watch it as like a 9 episode series, I think it'll be really good. But I think like week to week, I think it's kind of like
it's like the difference in how like when I told you about Love, Death, Robots, like
yeah. If you watch that week to week, oh no way, man.
yeah, right, it would not have the same hit. It wouldn't hit you as hard as it does when you just like watch the whole damn thing at once.
That's a great way to put it, I think.
And but yeah, no, I would agree. Like the episode was really good, but yeah, the show I think would have been served better by just a big chunk all given to us at once.
Yeah, because I think I would have just watched it straight through. I mean, I would have probably watched it pretty quick, and I would have at the end of it, would have probably been like, man, this is really good. It's probably the best thing they put out so far. But
it's like
yeah.
2 to 3 hours of stuff that you could have all watched at once. I guess. I mean, I don't know how many episodes they're planning.
They're actually doing 2 seasons, which
okay.
So there's this first 9 episodes, and then they're going to do a second season of 9 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of goes to show that like I think the show is good, and I think they have confidence in it, and I agree that they should have confidence in it because I think it's a good show.
Mm-hmm.
But I do I am kind of hoping that the next season that they just put, I don't think they will, but I think it would make sense if they just put it all out at once instead of having to do it week by week. I think it would resonate more. I mean, because that's what they're doing next week, I think, or the week after with that Star Wars Visions. They're just releasing it all at once. It's not going to be.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Which I think is going to be. I'm super excited for that. Like, I'm really excited for that.
Oh man, that's going to be a lot of fun to talk about too, actually.
Yeah. And what was your opinion of the zombie episode?
So that was the episode I was the most excited for, and I think was ultimately the most disappointed by so far in What If's run. And I think they pulled punches, man. Like, I think they could have done some really crazy shit. Like, they really could have. They went pretty dark with the Doctor Strange episode, and they went so fanciful and over the top with the Black Panther episode, or with the Star-Lord, T'Challa episode, that they really could have done some fucked up shit with this Marvel Zombies episode. And I really think they pulled their punches on how dark it could have gotten. And like overall, it just didn't feel like a very good story to me.
I think, if I'm being honest, I think that's maybe why I wasn't that excited for the zombies to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, I think it's little played out zombies right now.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, like I knew just with Disney and the way it said, I knew it wasn't going to be like The Walking Dead. Though, interestingly, Marvel Zombies is written by Robert Kirkman.
Mm-hmm.
If you weren't aware of that, so
Mm-hmm.
Who also did The Walking Dead and Invincible.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, like something that I did enjoy that harkened back to the comics, like the Marvel Zombies comic itself, like T'Challa's role in the episode was very, very much akin to his role in the comic originally.
Have you read? So did you read the comics?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so like I enjoyed that. I mean, have you read the Marvel Zombies? More or less, like T'Challa is essentially kind of like being kept alive and on ice by
his body parts.
Yeah, by Ant-Man, who like is eating him, like carving off pieces of him like a fucking Christmas ham to keep his mind sharp to like try and help find a cure for what's going on. And so, but yeah, he's like, it's the same leg, it's the whole thing. Like, so that definitely was a throwback to the comic.
And I thought that was actually kind of the darkest part of the episode. I was kind of gross, just the thought of that. And like someone said online too, it's like, oh, well, what happened to Ant-Man's body? Did they feed it to Wanda? It's pretty dark, right?
Right. And like, but yeah, I think that I don't know, and I think maybe one of the more annoying parts of that episode to me was that throwback to like this zombie Thanos, like at the very end of the episode.
Yeah, I didn't really. Oh, okay. Yeah. I was gonna say I didn't understand, but I do. So
Yeah, like I don't. Well, I mean, I don't know. Is it just that like that's gonna happen regardless? Like Thanos is. I don't know. I mean, that does kind of tie into his "I am inevitable" thing, but
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. That didn't. I don't. That kicker at the end with Thanos, like I
it
didn't really
felt
feel anything.
very out of place.
It didn't really. I was kind of like, oh, okay. I wasn't like, oh, whoa, look at that. Like it was kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
I guess that's
like
a thing.
Thanos being good and charming in the Star-Lord episode, like, was such an interesting change for the character, and like I was just very excited to like see what he would do in that episode and what his relationship would be with the characters. Seeing zombie Thanos, I was just like, oh, so it's just undead Thanos.
Yeah.
All right. Like, it's
Yeah.
like,
Well, I mean, I think a big thing with the show for me is it just says like I said, I like it. I think it's a good show.
mhm,
I don't. For me, like I just think they're like it almost feels like navel gazing, where like we're kind of like looking back at stuff that already happened and sort of like
mhm,
re-examining stuff. Like it's fun, but it's not like that. It doesn't feel exciting, I guess, to me. You know, it's just kind of like
mhm.
it's a fun show and I'm enjoying it, but I'm not like I don't know if that makes sense. But like I
No,
want
no,
to see
I
like I don't want to see like phase one, phase two, phase three. I want to see phase four. You know?
well, there's nothing new
Yeah.
happening, and like there's nothing really that's going to come of this, very likely, that'll have long-standing effects on the
Is
MCU
a
that we're
criticism
aware
for
of.
all the Marvel shows, truly, but
Yeah, and I think in this show's case, I think that's easily the easiest pill to swallow, that it wouldn't have any effect because it's animation versus live action,
yeah,
which, like, I don't think that needs to be the rule, but it's an easy one to understand.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, the fact that like WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier haven't really had any effects outside of the MCU is kind of disappointing.
yeah.
Um,
I
at
mean, they're all
least
just
so
kind of
far.
like, exactly like it just ends exactly where like the movies ended, kind of like,
Yeah, it ultimately doesn't lead up to anything that feels very meaningful.
yeah. I mean, I think the most meaningful thing that feels the most meaningful so far has been the introduction of King to me, but
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
And but yeah, like but yeah, I guess that's my take on the zombies episode. I don't know if you felt more strongly about it, more positively, or
Um, I didn't dislike it.
mhm,
I thought it was fine.
yeah,
It wasn't like anything I was like super excited about or anything. I just thought it was fine.
mhm,
It was fine.
yeah, like
And that's, honestly, that's the worst Marvel ever gets is fine. Like they're never
yeah,
like they never create something that's completely awful. It's usually just like, oh, okay, that was fine.
right. Like I think the closest that Marvel, in terms of the films and the shows, has like ever brushed with outright maybe bad was like Thor 2: The Dark World. And if that's as close as they've ever gotten, then they're doing pretty damn well, right? So
Yeah, I mean, I think I haven't seen Thor 2 in years, and I remember when I watched it, I actually didn't dislike that movie. I just think it's super forgettable.
mhm,
Um, but I think there's quite a few Marvel movies kind of like that.
yeah,
I would say Marvel hit it out of the ballpark with Iron Man, but I kind of think Incredible Hulk and Iron Man 2, though not terrible movies. I would even throw
mhm,
Thor and Captain America in there, the first one. They're not great. They're just kind of you can
mhm,
kind of tell they're still kind of finding their feet a little bit. But I
yeah,
only really think Marvel got really good. I think the first legitimately like great Marvel movie I think was The Winter Soldier, and
mhm,
then was immediately followed up by Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think is another like though not I think that movie's really like kind of iconic at this point.
mhm,
And then you like moved into like Civil War, which I honestly I think that movie might have actually been the best movie Marvel's produced.
Wow, that's a take.
I honestly do. I think that movie kind of tied everything together, like kind of with a beautiful bow. I think that was a really good film. And like even that final action scene in Civil War, it's the best I think Marvel's ever been. When like Bucky and Captain America are fighting Iron Man, like that was a great battle. Like there's like you could understand both sides so well, and like the stakes were really high. And just the way it even ended was just like so sad and kind of beautifully tragic, and like it was just Civil War is a great movie, and I think I yeah, I don't think it gets appreciated by a lot of people, and I can kind of understand that. But I remember seeing it in theaters. I'm like, damn, that was a great film, like just so good.
Yeah.
And I really like Doctor Strange. I'm just gonna go through all of them apparently. Thor 3, I thought was great. Like I love Thor 3. I think that might be their most rewatchable film actually. I really like Guardians Volume 2. I think that one's really rewatchable too. Actually anything those two brothers do, who are like famous for comedies.
Oh shoot.
The Russo brothers.
Yeah, the Russo brothers.
I mean, Infinity War, that might be the best one actually, but Civil War and Infinity War, I think they're both really strong films. And I really like Spider-Man, the Spider-Man Far From Home too. I actually thought that was really fun.
So you're proving my point with this list.
What's what?
The most forgettable fucking movies. It's not Thor or Dark World or anything like that. It's Ant-Man. That's
I agree. Yeah.
I really like Paul Rudd, but man, are those movies just like vanilla ice cream, white bread, boring.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
I just don't really like Ant-Man as a character so much. Like he's funny, I guess, but like he doesn't do it for me in the MCU.
Well, I think part of the problem is just the scripts and the direction for those movies. They're not bad, but I think honestly, like the Ant-Man's power is really cool. And I know originally it was supposed to be directed by like, you know, Edgar Wright, who's a famous director, but he left kind of all of it out of it like really quickly, and like that shocked a lot of people at the time. I remember I was kind of shocked by it.
Sure.
The first Ant-Man movie, I should say, and then it was taken up by Peyton Reed, who, you know, he's, you know, before he directed Ant-Man, he was directing comedies too, which the Russo brothers were doing as well. Sure. But Peyton Reed, he was like famous for like these, you know, like kind of man, I can't even remember. But then now what he's doing, he's like he directed a lot of the Mandalorian episodes from last season. Like he directed the one with Luke showing up.
Oh wow!
Spoilers, I guess. But
multiverse spoilers.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't really. And Peyton Reed, he's directing the third one, and Ant-Man, the third one's gonna come out. I just hope that they're willing to like go crazy with that film. And I think they might, because they're bringing Kang back for that film. So I mean, they could do some really crazy things. But and the other thing too, I think that didn't really, as much as I love Evangeline Lilly on Lost, like I don't think she's a great actress. Like she always kind of like seems like she's kind of pissed off.
Yeah, I mean, I think that tends to be a problem with like, I think it's just a casting thing and a little bit of a typecasting thing. Like Evangeline Lilly definitely gets typecast as the high-strung, like emotionally unavailable, strong, independent woman a lot.
Yeah,
like
and that's probably the role she likes too, you know. So
yeah, and I mean, if that, like, she can play whatever fucking role she wants, so that's like her thing. But like Hollywood has done to her what happened with Anthony Hopkins, like with, you know, playing Hannibal Lecter. Like he was creepy old man in movie for a long time.
Yeah,
and so like with her, yeah, I think that just kind of ends up making her feel very wooden and robotic.
Yeah,
and just a little boring.
I was watching. So have you ever heard of Comicbook Girl 19? So
Comicbook Girl 19.
No. Yeah, she has a YouTube channel. She did a review of Loki, which I thought was really great. I really loved her criticism of that show. It was basically like Marvel has an issue with women characters. And she's a woman, obviously. And she said the issue with their women characters is they're all like kind of like, what was her word for it? Like kind of like stuck up mamas. They're stuck up mommies. Like they're always
stuck up mommies.
Yeah, they're like always kind of like like they don't exude like and in Marvel movies, like almost every movie, that if there's a main male character, he's gonna have his shirt off. He's gonna like be showing off his pecs, and like,
Right.
but like it's come to the point in like Marvel movies where like you can't show cleavage. You can't sexualize the female characters at all, like
Hmm.
at all anymore.
Right.
And that was her criticism. She's like, yeah, like in like a lot of comic books, like Lady Loki, for instance, in comic books, she uses her sexuality. Like she's like voluptuous. She's
Hmm.
like it's part of her power, like that she can use her sexuality, and like she's using. And I think in a way like that's been taken out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like you don't see women who are
Hmm.
like kind of like scantily clad like that, and like fully like sexual and using that to their advantage.
Right.
And all the faults of DC, they have like someone like Harley Quinn, who kind of
Hmm.
does. And I don't know, I kind of appreciate that. I'm like, yeah, I mean, obviously I would appreciate that, but I kind of agree with
Right.
like
Well,
that.
no, like
Yeah. Anyway.
I think no, I think it's a valid criticism because like you have two film franchises, in terms of like if you even can call the DC universe a franchise anymore, but like and the MCU, who are very polar opposites in that regard. That like DC just kind of leans into it pretty heavily, both with the sexualizing of the male and female cast, whereas like Marvel has gotten so far away from sexualizing females as to like borderline just not do it at all ever.
Yeah.
Like,
I
yeah,
mean,
like
they received criticism for that. Like Scarlett Johansson, when she first showed up in Iron Man 2, she was definitely much different than she was in the later films.
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's not a weird thing for Natasha Romanoff to do, to use her feminine wiles to do her job. And it's okay for her to do that, but then to also like not be doing that when she's just being herself, right? So, but it's weird that there's like not more of a melding of the two sides, right? Like you can have your like men are men, women are women, all equal playing field style of film, that's fine. But like to not have people who are on the other side of that spectrum who are much more sexualized seems a little strange.
Yeah. And I would say that unfortunately, I think that's becoming more prevalent in Hollywood. Like
Hmm.
I feel like the character that you see women get kind of boxed into now, for better or worse, like they don't really use their sexuality at all. And they're kind of like stuck up a little bit, like not in a not, I don't mean to be like say anything, but it's just like I feel like they're the men can
No, they're
do like
bitchy.
the
They're
men well
super
like the
bitchy.
men get to go out and have fun and like do
Hmm.
stupid crap and make stupid jokes, but the woman is always
Hmm.
like, oh, you shouldn't do that, or they're always like kind of like
Yeah,
they're taking
they're all sitcom mommies.
exactly, yeah, they're
Like
like a sitcom mom.
they're all like very well put together, not goofy at all. Like
Yeah.
they're very high strung. Like, but what about the children? It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
uh,
Comic Book Girl 19 said something. He's like, yeah, I feel like if I got caught staring at Captain Marvel's cleavage, she'd like come out of space and like
just
one
obliterate
shot
you.
me like existence.
Yeah, like honestly, my wife complains about that in films, in shows, and books. Like she's a voracious reader, like, and she consumes way more television than I do. But like she hates that with a lot of like your primary like woman characters in shows, movies, whatever, books. Like that's become a very prevalent thing to do, is to like, oh, like we want to have a female character or a woman character be the lead in this. What should her personality be? And like, well, she's got to
Mm.
be a bitch. It's like
She has
from
to
the start.
be cardboard.
Yeah, she has to
Cardboard
be
personality.
cold-hearted and ruthless. It's like she
Yeah.
can't be like warm and bubbly at all. Like I just it's it's something that like I've kind of noticed but not really like taken in, but it's something that like for my wife is just like super obvious. Like
Yeah.
it's okay for like for a woman to be sexual just on her own terms, and you can work that into a story, but there's lots of other more specific examples, but it's kind of funny how I hadn't even really thought about that with the MCU.
Yeah, I mean that's a great. I would highly recommend. I can here. I'll do the YouTube thing. I'll put that video in the comments. It's really great. She's really funny. Like she's one of the funniest YouTubers I watch. I'll find myself actually legitimately laughing out loud for a lot of her stuff. Just
Dude,
as a great review of WandaVision that totally, if you like what I write or talk about WandaVision, you will love what she talks about WandaVision because she's all up in that stuff too.
Have you watched Lindsay Ellis yet? Because if you haven't, you really should.
Like, I haven't. Really no, is she really funny?
Yeah, you should really check her out. I think you'll really like her. She's also put out a few videos now about like her publishing her book. Like she now has released her second novel. And you should check out her book too. You might like it.
Maybe I will. Yeah.
But yeah, no, actually I'm looking at her YouTube page now and I'm kind of excited to check this out. This is
she's really great.
To be my day of videos while I'm working tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely check out her WandaVision and Loki reviews, especially her Loki one. I really enjoyed that one quite a bit. I thought that was really funny. Back in the day, like she used to put out a lot more content. Like she has like a lot of videos about like the history of the X-Men, and she's a huge comic book nerd, so she knows way more than I would ever know about it. She's really, really knowledgeable.
Yeah, I'll definitely check her out. But yeah, no, it's just it's interesting how this conversation went this way. But
yeah, totally.
But I mean, I think that is the MCU's greatest, I guess crime, if you want to call it that. But like, a lot of the movies can be very cookie cutter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and like we were just talking about Shang-Chi, and I feel like Katie is a different sort of character. Like she doesn't really fit that mold that we're talking about at all. But I would definitely say a lot of the characters in the MCU definitely do fit that mold that we were talking about. Yeah.
I will say I did really appreciate Katie and Shang-Chi's relationship in that they're just friends. And like they didn't turn it into a romance for like, and if it turns into that, then I'll be eating my words. But I really like how they're just friends. Like I think that is an entirely appropriate place for them to remain. It's like
in all fairness though, like I do kind of feel like Awkwafina, like I feel like of all the movies I've seen her in, she never gets to be the love interest. And I wouldn't mind actually letting her be the love interest. So let's do that, Marvel, because I think I'm like she's not conventionally like attractive, right? Like she's not like what you would think of as like a, like it's not like the other women in in Shang-Chi, like some of them are just gorgeous. She's obviously she's there for her comedy, right? Like not saying that she's not pretty, but she's not like, the supermodel character.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Talking about. But yeah, no, I remember. I'm like, she should be the love interest. I think that'd be really interesting because obviously Simu Liu is like a man god. Like he's pretty attractive. I guess not in China. They all think he's ugly, but a lot of people do. Anyway.
Which I still, I still don't fucking understand. Like, he's gorgeous, but but yeah, no, like I mean, I don't know. I only disagree in that like I like that they're just good friends, and it's not often in the MCU like they brutally in the first Thor movie really tried to make it seem like freaking Natalie Portman, right? Yeah, Natalie Portman and or Jane Foster and like had any sort of fucking chemistry at all. It's just like it might as well have been two cardboard cutouts, and they're like, no kiss. Like
Natalie Portman's a weird one. Like I find like I always feel like she's holding something back, like I never feel like we get the full acting ability of Natalie Portman whenever I see her.
Well, like you have this personality of her in the first Thor movie, which is just very like she's not standoffish, but she is definitely not gonna like be the damsel in distress type of character for pretty much the entire movie. But then when it's convenient at the end of the movie, when Thor comes back and proves himself to like actually literally be the god of thunder, she is like all of a sudden changes pretty drastically. So like the literal the line that kills me every time is it's just this slow pan in onto Natalie Portman's face, and she goes, "Oh my god!" Like I was like, "What is this fucking scene?" Like,
she's coming back too, right? She's coming back for Thor 4. Thor 4. Why didn't they not call it that? Thor 4.
Thor 4.
Dang it.
That's a mouthful. Thor 4.
Thor 4.
But
she's
yeah,
gonna be Lady Thor.
And the fact, I mean, I have high hopes for that movie to be good because like Thor Ragnarok was just so good. We're gonna have to wrap it up here shortly. Actually, I'm realizing how late it is here. But yeah, like you're right. I just don't know about Natalie Portman. Like she does kind of feel like she's a little, maybe not holding back necessarily, but maybe she's just like not as good of an actress as I had maybe previously thought.
I mean, her best roles of all time was the prequel trilogy, and she's just never been able to rise to the occasion.
That's as good of a place to end the podcast as
any. I love those movies.
Not even gonna get into that debate.
No, I don't want to talk about that debate. I'm just stating a cold hard fact.
But I will. I mean, the prequels are better than the new trilogy. Just saying.
I mean, I would agree with that, just based on a purely world building stance. So.
but any closing thoughts for you on any of the stuff we've talked about, Nick?
Man, we just went through the MCU entirely. Like we just did a deep dive on the MCU, which was a lot of fun.
That happens almost every time.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to do with the MCU just because they put out so much content, and a lot of it is actually pretty compelling. Mm-hmm. I don't think DC. What are they putting out? The Suicide Squad, a movie I loved, but it's just it's just a shot in the. It's just like one tiny little movie and then nothing. But like Marvel, you're constantly building up on other things, which obviously they perfected because it's great.
Yeah, well, and like with Suicide Squad, like it did not do super well in theaters, and so
I guess it did okay on HBO Max. It didn't. I mean, it wasn't anything to write home about, but it did okay. It is like the the movie that did best on HBO Max this year? Can you just guess? Like the movie that had like the most viewers?
Probably this year or in the past year.
Well, like in 2020 or 2021, sorry.
Yeah, in 2021, I couldn't even ballpark a guess. What is it?
Well, they put out a lot of interesting movies this year on HBO Max, actually. Mm-hmm. So we had like Godzilla vs. Kong, we had Space Jam, we had Mortal Kombat, we had Suicide Squad.
Mortal Kombat came out this shit. I guess it is fucking September. Wow.
Wait, I'm trying to think of other ones they put. They put out a lot of films this year, and a lot of them have been at least buzzworthy. I've had a good time and talking and enjoying them. I'm probably missing a big one, and then the Matrix is coming out on HBO Max. I mean, there's a trailer. I'm sure you saw that too.
Yes, and I have lots of strong opinions on that. But...
Damn it! I want to know your opinion.
Very briefly, I'm really annoyed they're not bringing back Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah, I don't understand that. That's weird.
And it doesn't really seem like he understands it either.
Apparently he died or something in like the Matrix Online, and they're like, that's canon. I'm like, well, like Trinity died, Neo died, so it's the big deal.
Yep. I mean, it's a movie. Who fucking cares? Like, you're rebooting an old franchise. Like, if you're going to bring back these characters for these movies, if you're bringing back 2 of the 3 of the lead actors and actresses, bring back the whole trio. What the fuck are you doing leaving Lawrence Fishburne out of the fun? That's such
I love that I just like inspired such passion.
I love it. Really, I love the Matrix. Like that was a whole phase of my life where I was really obsessed with the Matrix, and I played the games a shit ton too. Like that was a whole era of my life, and Morpheus was a big part of that. And for them to literally recast him like decades later and then have the balls to put Keanu back in, that pisses me off. I'm really annoyed by that.
It's weird too, and this will be brief, I promise. I have this like weird theory, and it's all like my headcanon theory.
Mhm.
That have you seen the John Wick movies?
Not all of them, unfortunately.
Okay, it's fine. Like, but Lawrence Fishburne, I believe, comes in the second one or the
Yes,
third.
I thought it was the third one. I think.
So there's only three. So
Yeah.
if you've seen those three, and
Mhm.
admittedly, it's been like a few years since I've seen them, so I don't have all the details.
Mhm.
But like there's a lot of characters or a lot of actors that appeared in the Matrix who are in John Wick. Like I think the Keymaker also
Mhm.
is in the first one, and obviously Keanu Reeves is in it and Lawrence Fishburne are in it. So
Mhm.
I'm like, what if like John Wick is like some like version of the Matrix and they're like playing different versions of them? I don't know. Anyway, it's
No,
something I love. I like to think about that stuff.
I've heard that theory, and I do really like it. I think it's really
Yeah.
cool.
But anyway, the reason why I brought it up is because why they can get Lawrence Fishburne back for John Wick, but they don't bring him back for the Matrix. Like what?
It
That's
sounds like, I think honestly, there's probably some like weird bad blood thing we don't know about between him and the directors.
or maybe he is in it, and maybe they're just like being coy.
I mean, that's what I've heard some people saying, but Fishburne has said he has not been contacted about the project, which he could be lying, but
Yeah, no, that's weird. I don't like that. They should definitely have had him back.
it
The only
just,
thing I can think, like maybe he's kind of old now. Like not super old, but
mhm.
I don't know if I necessarily can picture Lawrence Fishburne now being able to like pull off like karate or
Well, how
whatever.
convenient. You have this guy who looks vaguely like him, who could be his stunt double. But like, like,
Yeah, I know.
just fucking bring back Lawrence Fishburne. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. Okay, we can
Anyway,
revisit that.
but I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of the Nerds of the North podcast, episode number 20. We had a milestone of 20 episodes. How very exciting. And it seemed like a good episode. Apparently, a long one. We had a lot to say about the things we talked about.
I had a
So,
really good time this episode. I think we covered a lot of ground. And I mean,
yeah,
if anyone legitimately ever listened to this and was curious about these topics, I feel like we actually covered a lot of things that
we would have made so many people fall asleep by now.
Oh no.
No. We're gonna do an ASMR themed episode where I'm gonna whisper into the mic. I'm gonna speak very softly. Tip, 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 tip. But no, thank you all for listening. Yeah, we're gonna probably have socials for this at some point and get it all going, and hopefully it's gonna be fun. We're gonna make this happen. But thank you all for listening, and we hope that you all have a wonderful week, and we will catch you in the next episode of the podcast.
See you all later. Goodbye.